Let's talk international trade, a famously impulsive president, a rising global power, and a relationship that's always been a little complicated. The US and India have long danced between partnership and rivalry, but in 2025, things took a dramatic turn. This time, it wasn't just a diplomatic spat, it was a showdown that made headlines worldwide, sending shockwaves through global markets and boardrooms. In July 2025, President Trump, never one for subtlety, took to Truth Social and announced a sweeping 25% tariff on all Indian exports to the US, a sledgehammer move set to start within days, catching both allies and critics off guard. The official reason: India's high tariffs on US goods, so-called non-monetary barriers, and a trade environment that Trump called unfair for American businesses. But there was more. Most provocatively, India's ongoing oil trade with Russia was in the spotlight, raising eyebrows in Washington and beyond. Trump claimed India was fueling the war in Ukraine by buying Russian oil, and after 5 failed negotiation rounds, he wanted to force India's hand, making it clear he was willing to play hardball. Ironically, Indian businesses had celebrated Trump's 2024 re-election, hoping for friendlier ties and a boost in trade cooperation. Instead, they got hardball, uncertainty, and threats to escalate tariffs even further if India didn't comply. The US is India's biggest export market, $130 billion in goods and services in 2024, from textiles to tech, pharmaceuticals to auto parts. For India, a trade war with its top customer was a nightmare scenario, threatening jobs, growth, and the future of countless businesses. The world watched anxiously. Would India buckle under US pressure, or find a new way to play the game and protect its interests? The stage was set for a monumental showdown. The popcorn was ready, and the world was watching every move. So, how did India react to Trump's tariff hurricane? When the world expected a stormy backlash or frantic headlines, India chose a different path, one that surprised many global observers, not with panic, but with strategic calm. Behind closed doors, Indian officials weighed their options, refusing to be rushed into a hasty response. Their approach was deliberate, almost serene, signaling confidence rather than anxiety. The government's official response was measured. "We're studying the implications." Translation: no drama, no escalation, just a steady hand on the wheel. This was a textbook example of keeping cool under pressure. Instead of retaliatory tariffs, India countered with logic, arguing that its Russian oil purchases actually stabilized global prices, benefiting everyone, including Americans. This was a move rooted in economic pragmatism, not emotion. Then India called out Western double standards. The EU and US were still trading with Russia themselves, importing everything from uranium to palladium. India made it clear that the rules should be the same for everyone. The message was unmistakable: don't lecture us while your own shopping carts are full of Russian goods. India wasn't just defending itself, it was challenging the narrative. India reframed the narrative, positioning itself as a pragmatic, sovereign nation acting in its own interests, just like everyone else. This was a subtle but powerful shift in global perception. By holding up a mirror to the West, India exposed the hypocrisy behind the tariff threat. It was a diplomatic masterstroke, turning criticism into an opportunity. This wasn't just defense, it was a bold assertion of India's new global confidence. The world took notice, and India's calm, calculated response set a new standard for international diplomacy. What does America actually buy from India? The answer might surprise you because the economic ties between the two countries run deeper than most people realize, a lot more than you think. Walk into any American store and you'll find Indian-made products on the shelves, sometimes in places you'd never expect. Smartphones top the list. India recently overtook China as the #1 exporter to the US, thanks to Apple's production shift. That means the phone in your pocket might well be Indian-made. Pharmaceuticals are next. Nearly a third of all US imported medicines come from India. A 25% tariff here would hit American healthcare hard, raising costs for hospitals, pharmacies, and patients alike. Then there's jewelry. India supplies over 30% of US gems and jewelry, worth $10 billion a year. From engagement rings to luxury watches, Indian craftsmanship is everywhere. Home linens? India provides 36% of US imports. Even your bedsheets and towels would get pricier. The impact would be felt in every American home, right down to the basics. The list goes on: frozen shrimp, Petroleum oils, semiconductors, from your dinner table to your car and your computer, every sector would feel the pain of higher tariffs. Trump's blanket tariff wasn't a surgical strike, it was a wrecking ball aimed at a supply chain built over decades, threatening to unravel years of cooperation and investment. The consequences would ripple through nearly every corner of the American economy, from small businesses to major corporations, and ultimately to everyday consumers. This was high-stakes brinkmanship, with real costs for both sides. The future of trade, and the price of everyday life, was hanging in the balance. Who really pays for tariffs? Not foreign governments, American consumers and businesses. A 25% tariff is a tax on importers, who pass the cost to customers. That means higher prices for iPhones, prescriptions, bed sheets, and shrimp. We've seen this before. Tariffs on China led to price hikes, shoes up 39%, apparel up 37%. The India tariffs threatened to do the same, but across even more products. The timing was terrible. Americans were already struggling with inflation. Tariffs on Indian pharmaceuticals risked making essential medicines unaffordable for many. Instead of punishing India, the tariffs would punish American families and businesses, making U.S. companies less competitive. Retailers faced a lose-lose choice: absorb the cost or pass it on and lose customers. The result? Higher bills for everyone, a self-inflicted wound. Tough talk, but the pain landed at home. Beneath the drama, trade talks had been grinding on for months. The U.S. wanted access to India's vast market, especially for agriculture and dairy. But for India, these were untouchable red lines. The livelihoods of hundreds of millions of farmers were at stake. Memories of massive farmer protests in 2020 made concessions politically impossible for New Delhi. India offered compromises elsewhere: lower tariffs, more U.S. oil and jets, even zero tariffs on some goods. But Trump wanted more, especially on Russian oil and agriculture. The result? Stalemate. The deal died because neither side could budge on its core interests. The tariff threat wasn't about a lack of effort. It was about immovable political realities. For India, protecting its farmers was non-negotiable. For Trump, symbolic wins mattered more than practical deals. The clash was inevitable. As Trump's threats escalated, India's diplomacy went into overdrive. Instead of caving, India sent a clear signal. Its top officials visited Moscow, reaffirming its independent ties with Russia. This wasn't about choosing sides. It was about strategic autonomy, India's right to manage its own alliances. India kept talking to the U.S. too. Diplomats worked Congress, business leaders, and think tanks, explaining how tariffs would hurt Americans. India's two-pronged approach, firm with one hand, open with the other, kept it from being isolated. The world saw India as measured and mature, while Trump's moves looked erratic. By refusing tit-for-tat escalation, India seized the narrative and enhanced its global standing. It was a diplomatic balancing act, and it worked. India emerged as a steady, influential player on the world stage. When the tariff threat hit, India's markets wobbled, stocks dipped, the rupee slipped, and boardrooms buzzed with anxiety. For a country reliant on exports for growth and jobs, the risk was real, but the panic didn't last. The government's calm response reassured investors. No rash retaliation was coming. Analysts quickly realized the tariffs would hurt the U.S. as much as India, maybe more. India's economy, now more diversified and less dependent on the U.S. than a decade ago, absorbed the shock. The initial tremor faded, replaced by resilience. India's economic shock absorbers held firm. The episode proved India could weather external storms without crisis. It was a test, and India passed. In the end, Trump's tariff gambit fizzled. Domestic opposition in the U.S. and India's shrewd response forced a retreat. The tariffs were watered down, not the economic earthquake Trump promised, but the real story. India emerged stronger, more confident, and more influential. The crisis accelerated India's push to diversify trade, reducing reliance on any single market. India's calm, principled stand reshaped its global image, from balancing power to leading power. Other developing nations took note. You can stand up to a superpower without aggression. The US-India relationship will remain vital, but now as more equal partners. For India, the 2025 tariff tantrum was a baptism by fire, and it passed with flying colors. The big win, securing its place as a confident, indispensable player in global trade and politics.